in Chau Doc in 1974. I had in February written my 40-page airgram report about the Khmer Rouge entitled the Khmer Rouge Plan to Create a Communist Society in Southern Cambodia. First report ever submitted by anyone about the true nature of the Khmer Rouge. I had done other reports about how Vietnamese civilians and Vietnamese military were being pushed out of Cambodia by the Khmer Rouge, how that was in the short term helpful to the South Vietnamese. So I had told that story. And then 2 months later, after I submitted in February of 74, in April, mid-April 1974, the weekly plane landed in Chau Doc, the Air America flight, and I ran out. I had my handwritten reports to give to the pilot. He would fly them to the Consulate General in Canton, where they'd be turned into telegrams and reports from the border. And he hands me an envelope, and which was fairly unusual, and it was my orders. It was orders announcing and telling me that I was being transferred from Vietnam to be assigned to the National Security Council at the White House in Washington, D.C. Whoa, I was startled, surprised. Nobody had told me about this, that it was coming. Apparently, my report in February about the Khmer Rouge had gotten some attention. There was a slot for a more junior officer. I was still a pretty junior State Department officer on Henry Kissinger's National Security Council staff, and I was being assigned to it. Now, I have to admit, I had never worked in Washington. I didn't know exactly what the National Security Council did, but I knew that Henry Kissinger was a very important player, and being at the White House, it had to be a fairly important assignment, and so my life was about to change. I was going to have to go to Saigon, and I would be getting briefings. The ambassador wanted to see me, the chief of station of the Central Intelligence Agency, senior State Department and military attaches would all want to see me. Prior to going back, there'd be special intelligence briefings. I would need to travel around Southeast Asia to Cambodia and Laos to be briefed on what was happening in those countries, because I would be covering all of them at the NSC in Washington. And I would have to get married, because I had a fiancé who was, we had never gotten married because the rule was, even if she was Vietnamese and had never been outside the U.S., anyone who was a spouse of an American employee in Vietnam could not be in Vietnam. They had to live and exist outside Vietnam. So if I had married my Vietnamese fiancée, Lê Son, she would immediately have to have moved out. So we put that off, but now we have to begin plans for how to get married. And this involved doing the government's paperwork. It involved my arranging for the official ceremony where my representative would ask her father for her hand in marriage, sort of my matchmaker to make the deal. And then we would also have to consult soothsayers about the most propitious day. And finally, she would have to have a clearance. The State Department would have to do a security investigation to make sure that she wasn't connected to in any way any people or organizations that might be a risk to security. And if she didn't have the security clearance, we couldn't get married. I mean, we could get married, but I couldn't have my job and I couldn't keep my security clearance. So all of these would combine to make for an interesting experience over the next month and a half, and would lead to our having 2 wedding anniversaries and a honeymoon that would occur 40 years later.